Hey, CPO here, and I'm starting to tinker around with phase 3 of my 3-point leveling platform. And as you recall, phase 3, my intention was to try and get a rotatable surface to where you could strap down the Heli and then rotate it and still maintain an accurate level. And that presents several challenges, primarily making a rotatable surface not too bad. But one that is fairly consistently level is going to be the problem. One of the things I thought about doing is just putting the two pieces of wood flat on top of each other, making a pivot point, bolting in the two pieces, and then basically pivoting one on top of the other. That may still probably be the most efficient method, but the challenge there is you've got two pieces of wood together that there's going to be a little bit of friction there. So what I was thinking about doing is making it a little bit more easy to rotate by developing a system whereby it would rotate with a little less friction. The problem there is finding a reliable method to do that without introducing variance. So I looked at the Lazy Susan bearing assemblies, and they had a little bit of play in them. I didn't like that. I wanted something with no play. Alright, so what these are magic sliders, and they came in an 8-pack. This is probably the most expensive thing I bought. I don't remember what it was, maybe $7. I was hesitant, but I thought I like the idea of the actual product itself, so I figured I would give it a try. But basically, they're a hard plastic with a little bit of a slippery Teflon-y type surface on top, and underneath is a rubbery, a hard rubber, not soft rubber, but a rubber sort of a backing. And it came with screws. What I liked about it, what I didn't like about it was they weren't all exactly the same height, so off the table. They varied a little bit due to manufacturing tolerances, and so what I need for a level surface that's going to rotate is all of these have to be exactly level off the countertop. Otherwise, it will adjust, which is what I didn't want to begin with, which is why I didn't pick some of the standard ball bearing sort of devices. They all had too much play. I didn't like it at all, and I wanted something fairly low tech. The cool thing about them, though, is, number one, they came in an 8-pack. I ended up only using 4, which means I could pick the 4 that were fairly close in height. But also, depending on how tightly I tighten them down, I can adjust them because this rubber will compress a little bit. So what I did is I ended up just leveling them one to the other until I got a situation that worked out well for me. So I used this big honkin' level because it's got a nice flat aluminum surface on the bottom, which made it easy to check the level. I'll kind of show you using a smaller plastic level how it works. But basically, what I would do is just set it on there. I don't know how level this is. I changed tables. So first thing I did is I calibrated the level on the surface itself, right? And then I just leveled 2 of them to one another. Once I got them leveled on that plane, then I changed planes and basically got these 2 level to one another. So these all should be on the same plane, which should be perfectly level. So from then, I can start adding in the other point here. Remember when I talked a little bit about 3-point versus 4-point? The challenge is I can get 3 of them on a plane easy, and I got to get the 4th one added into the mix. So these 3 are all level to one another, which means I add this one in, and any adjustment that gets made, it gets made to this one, not to these. And the reason is these are already set up to one another. So if I get this one adjusted, then that one should automatically match this one, and I complete the square of the plane. So that's kind of how I leveled that. I would tweak maybe with just a little nudge on the screwdriver back and forth and get it done. And right now, as you can see, it never hurts to adjust calibration even manually by setting it on the tabletop, making sure that you're level, then going up to these guys if you choose to use this method. I mean, this is the method I picked. So now that those are all done, I'll probably tack the edges with, I may use hot glue, just kind of push it around the edges just to kind of lock those so they don't kind of work loose over time. But anyway, I started out with a much more complicated pattern. As a matter of fact, I had all 8 basically in a circle. What I found out is the more points I have to get adjusted on the same plane, the more challenging it was. In the end, it became a nightmare to try and get all 8 of them perfectly adjusted so they were all level on one plane. 3, remember, 2 is easy to get level, right? Add a third one, add a fourth one, not so bad. I could continue adding in more now that these 4 are set. I could throw one in here and then adjust it to either one of these and should get it level. I ran into a little bit more problems with the variances in the widths of these little feet. Anyway, what I realized is, why am I going through all this trouble to put a bunch of them when all I really need is 4 to support the platform? So the platform is just simply a square with the corners cut out. And if I set it back down on here, you can see I've got, if you remember where those points were, I've got points like right about right here, which gives me plenty of support for anything I'm working on in here. The reason the corners are cut is so that whenever I make this rotation right here, I don't hit my adjustment knob. And that basically gets me as big of a surface as I can with still being able to have room to manipulate the adjusters as well as rotate without hitting the adjusters. So that's how that is. Now on the bottom, this is just a 3/8 inch bolt, and I actually have one of these square, it's got that little square end on there, and basically I just countersunk it in there and took a little hammer, boop, knocked it in there, locked it in place, and then now that sits up to the top. I have one flat washer, kind of a bigger washer, and then one nut, which I will eventually Loctite to be just snug. I want it snug enough so there's no variance whenever I wiggle it, but not too snug that it is no longer easy to turn. So I started out with just wood on wood without the little feet. I didn't like it very much. It was really kind of hard to turn. It was friction, too much friction. And I thought, I get a Heli loaded on there. I've got this thing perfectly adjusted and leveled. The last thing I want to do is be struggling to turn it. So I wanted it to turn fairly easy. So this gives me a fairly easy turn because of those gliders. And it works. So the next thing I'm going to do, like I said, is I'm going to tack down these with some hot glue just around the edges, just to kind of lock them in place. And then I'm going to put my surface back on. I am going to put the spring eye bolts back on the top surface now. So as you can see, I painted my stage 1 or stage 2 design, whichever one you want to call it. I painted it, and turned out to be not worth the time or trouble, because now that is the platform. But I may or may not paint this one. I probably won't for now, just because I think I don't even know how much white paint I have left. But I'll put a little thread lock on that once I get it just right. Put my mounting eyelets on there. But I mean, everything from a MCPX. Not that I would probably need to level an MCPX for any reason, or do any leveling. all the way up to, again, here's the 500 I have. Will fit on there just fine. Anything bigger should fit on there. It doesn't matter if the skids kind of go off the end a little bit. That actually doesn't matter a bit, as long as there's a flat surface on there. And of course, as you saw in the last video, I'm going to have springs, and I'll show you this here in a minute. I'll have springs to hold these things down. But this basically gives me an ability to have a rotational surface perfectly level. Anyway, that is that, and let's get this thing finished up. I'll be right back. Alright, so here it is. This is the final final assembly. So as you can see, I've got my my tie-down springs. And again, I'm probably going to get some stiffer springs next time I go to the hardware store. But these work for now. I've got my bolt and nut thread locked, just snug. I did take a little hot glue and put some hot glue on those sliders to make sure that they stay in place. And as you can see, the bottom of that lag bolt is pushed all the way through, and there are my feet. So, all right, so here we go. This is my completed assembly here on the bench, and as you can see, I've got a level set up here. This is my CPO Heli Tools level, which is a really cool level for several reasons. One of them is it's got the spirit bubble on it, as well as it's got this tilting display, so I can kind of angle it up a little bit for you to see here. So the point is that if this table's level, which it is, this platform is level, then this rotating top piece will also maintain level all the way around the rotation. So let's use the patented CPO level cam and take a look. Alright, so it's not a patented level cam, but it is my camera sitting on the platform taking a look at the level. And as you can see, as I move it to all the different positions, we get back to a 0 level position. And that's the goal, right? Is to be able to have a completely level platform no matter where it is in the rotation of the table. All right, so that's great, but what's the point? Well, that's a great question. The point is, if I'm working on something that needs to be perfectly level, I can rotate this around and still maintain level. The additional point is when I'm working on a heli and I want to level the heli itself, and maybe I'll demonstrate that here. Let me stick my 500 on here. By the way, I know I talked about using heavier springs. What I found out is just if I stretch these springs across from one side to the other, they actually hold quite well. So I'm keeping with these existing springs for now because they seem to be working just fine for what I'm trying to do. At any rate, so there's my heli now mounted. And the thought being is if I have, let's say I adjusted this table so that my main shaft was completely level. Now I can, I'm working and I want to adjust some links. Let's say I want to flip the heli around and do some work over here. Then if I flip it back, I should still be level. So, you know, I guess... Again, I kind of over-engineered it, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to see if I could come up with something that would work. The reality of it is, this rotational platform is kind of a non-issue. I don't even know how much value I'm going to get out of it, but I wanted to see if I could come up with a solution. So the one challenge, though, is if you use this to level your heli and you rotate it, the heli is no longer going to be level if it's not in the original position where you set the adjustment. But you can still, like I said, you can still work on it, move it around, switch it, you know, flip it around. Actually, let me move this camera back a little bit. And then I could swap this whole thing around just like that without having to mess around with tweaking any of the adjustments on the table, adjust links, whatever I need to do to check, that I'm working on, and then just swing it back over, and I should still be in a level position. So, heck, let's test the theory. Why not? All right, so I've mounted my my Heli tools level on top of the helical, on top of the main shaft. Don't worry, I'm going to do an entire setup video with this Heli tool. Very excited about that. This is a kind of a new thing. I've been waiting on it to set up the head, but I'm going to use it to set up the swash, set pitch, all that stuff. And that's actually the reason why I even built this leveling table, because I wanted to have something to play around with this tool with. But anyway, let's real quick let me adjust this main shaft and get it to level. So I'm just tweaking on my table. There's side to side. Now let's get front to rear. I love that spirit bubble. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at this top number here, because that's the calibrated spirit level, which is true level. The other one is adjustable, and you can zero that out given the situation you're in. So in theory, the top number should always be accurate, assuming you've got it's well calibrated, which they come shipped calibrated, but you can recalibrate them on something like a leveling table. At any rate, so I've got zeros there, and as I rotate this thing around, I should still have zeros. And I gotta make a few minor adjustments. It's very sensitive. The cool thing is I can look down over the top and I don't have to tweak my head around to find that level. I find that moving it around just a little bit helps me get it zeroed in the different positions, because you kind of find that sweet spot in between. The difference between a 0.0 and a 0.1, you kind of find that sweet spot in between there. So now that I've got my spirit level adjusted, so now I'm fairly well calibrated. My actual relative level to the spirit level. At any rate, let's take a look at what happens when I spin this head around. I'm going to adjust the camera angle to the top so you can see it better. Alright, so now I'm looking at the top, thanks to the swiveling display here. And as you can see, as I move this head around, within a little bit of variance of error, I'm at 0, right? So my main shaft, in theory, and hopefully in practice, is exactly perpendicular. It's straight up and down. So now the issue is, if I move the Heli, right, if I rotate the table, what does that do to my value? And of course, like I said, remember, it's not going to be the same, because I've got a little bit of angle. I don't know what that angle is right now, but the difference between the level table and the level main shaft is probably a couple of degrees or so. But let's look at what it would do if I shifted that Heli all the way around. All right, so if I did this right, what's going to happen is I've got my Heli main shaft zeroed. If I flip the Heli around, and I'm just rotating it on the table, right, how it's designed to articulate, spin this main shaft around, you can see I'm at about 0.3 degrees, which that basically ends up being the difference from straight up and down. That's how much of like a little bit of a cant the main shaft has, and that's why we level the main shaft for head setups, is because they're not straight up and down when the Heli's flat. You gotta got to make some adjustments. So that's a 0.3, but the real issue is going to be, the test is going to be, when I flip the heli back around, does it re-zero itself, which is what I'm hoping for. And check it out. So the utility in this rotating table design is that I could do some work. Let's say I want to adjust a link on this side. I want to flip it around, adjust a link on this side. Okay, when I flip it back, I can feel fairly confident that my main shaft is still going to be straight up and down. And again, as demonstrated here. So that allows me to do my measurements from one position, but then continue to move the heli around to work on it, make the tweaks that I need to make, and then flip it back over, and then still see that I'm straight up and down. So, I mean, that's why I did it. Again, this is kind of overkill. I warned you I was going to be over-engineering this, but that's the table. And I showed you previously that I had used, you know, those sliders. That's what they look like inside of there. Now, the reality of it is, did I have to use those sliders? You know, I was thinking about it later, and I was wondering if maybe just some washers that are the same dimension would have worked, instead of just, you know, maybe glue those down to the table and then use those to slide this rotating platform on. I don't know. Probably could have. I probably spent way too much time messing around with those other sliders. But hey, that's kind of how I roll. So at any rate, that's it. This is the phase 3 of the table, which is a rotatable platform on top of the leveling table, which allows me to either make a completely rotatable level surface, or level a heli and then know that when I rotate it away and then back to its original location, that it's still going to be in good shape. So that's it. Oh, and the Soko Heli tools, that kit, again, you can expect to see a complete setup video on it here in the very near future when I set up this head. I'm going to use this tool to set up swash plate leveling, as well as the blade pitch. Very excited about this. Been waiting for a while for this tool to get here. Anyway, more about that to come, I promise. I'm excited to use it, and I'm fairly certain that it's going to be really awesome. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.